How do you maintain a gap-free ledger? When computing your rent income, how many of you actually have a ledger or a ledger system for calculating your payments? Your ledger is going to make you money. For those of you who don't do this on a regular basis, I want you to follow along with me, and we'll show you how your ledger should go without gaps. But first, I want to ask you a question. How many of you have ever filled a bucket with water? Anybody here filled a bucket? Yeah, that's a pretty basic thing. Imagine filling that bucket. So you've got a water hose and the bucket's here and you're filling it. Have you ever filled a bucket and found layers of air, pockets of air inside the bucket just because you took some time and stepped away and then went back, stepped away and went back, stepped away and went back? Has anyone ever experienced this? No. In fact, every time we go back, that water just stacks on top of the other water and stacks and stacks and stacks. But somehow, when we're refilling our rent buckets, we leave all sorts of gaps. We defy the properties of physics, and sometimes there's a gap in the month of January, and then there's a gap in the month of February, and a gap in the month of March. And that's because we're not charging everything that our lease requires. To have a gap-free account ledger, you're charging for everything, and you're using that application of funds clause in your lease so that every time funds come in, they pay for the oldest debt first. They start filling from that last debt. It doesn't matter that they say, this is rent only, Ernie, please only apply this to rent. Sounds great. It's going to everything. And in fact, it's going to go to non-rent obligations first, because that's the only thing that makes sense. If they owe you money, they pay the money, and they're going to pay the oldest debt first. I don't know how many times I get landlords to come in, and it's March, and they're talking to me about, well, they paid in July, and they didn't pay in August, so they owe me for August, and they paid September and October, but they owe me for November, and they paid December, they owe me for January, February, and now March. It's like, why are there any gaps in your ledger? They don't owe you anything for those old months. They paid them already, and now they only owe you for the last months that remain unpaid after all payments are applied first to the oldest debt. And if you're doing this, you can always capture extra fees, unpaid deposits, and repair costs. And I'm going to show you with this ledger. The facts. We have a tenant that has a $1,000 per month lease. All right? Late fees are calculated at $30 per day beginning on day 4, because that's the soonest that Texas law will allow us to assess a late fee. That does not mean, by the way, that rent isn't due until the 4th. Remember, rent is due on the first day of the month or before. They can pay early, I don't mind that, but it can't be paid after without, and it still be called on time. Landlords, as always, we welcome you to follow us on our Instagram page. If you're not a member yet, join us on Facebook. And if you enjoy what you see here, give us a thumbs up. Click that like button. We enjoy that very much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. January's rent, paid in full, January 2nd. And you can already see February's rent, paid $1,000 on February 6th, and so on and so forth. So you can see this is not regular payment on the 1st. In fact, there's only one payment on the 1st of the month, and that's April's. Okay, so how are we going to fill this out? Well, on January 1st, we get our first debt. That's $1,000 that goes under rent. 0 amount in fees, because we can't charge late fees yet. 0 in payment, because nothing came in. What is our rent balance? It's $1,000. They owe $1,000. This is what's owed. So we charge them $1,000. They've paid nothing. They owe $1,000. Your balance should reflect $1,000. Now on January 2nd, do they get additional rent? No. Can we charge fees on the 2nd? No. But did they pay? Yes. So payment on January 2nd, $1,000. What is our rent balance now? Zero. So we're good. Now February 1st comes around, and so we got $1,000 for rent. Any fees? No. Any payment? Of course not. Why would that happen? What's your rent balance? $1,000. Now, on February 4th, no additional rent, but we get our first late fee. So we assess a $30 late fee. No payment. So what is our balance? $1,030. Very good. On the 5th, the same. What's our balance? $1,060. On the 6th, we get another late fee, but hey, we got a payment of $1,000. What is our rent balance? $90 of rent. These are not late fees. Who can tell me why? That's it. You've already covered them. Your application of funds clause says, I can cover your payment to fees first. And that's what you've done. And the balance remaining is unpaid rent. Believe it or not, on this date, you can issue a notice to vacate for failure to pay rent. You could have done it on the 3rd. You could have done it on the 2nd. But even after a payment, you can say, oh, thank you. Deposit and notice to vacate. Because you are a terrible tenant, I can already tell. We just started this lease, and already you have multiple breaches within the first 35 days. Bad sign, bad sign. Absolutely, in person, with a selfie. You definitely can. You definitely can. Now, is that a good business decision? That's for you to decide. But there are telltale signs that this is not a good fitting tenant right from the start. 35 days in and you already have this? I don't like it. I don't like it. But we continue. We continue. On the 7th, you get another late fee. And the balance goes up to 120. Now on the 21st, something interesting happens. It says on February 21st, 2023, tenant changes the lock on the main entry door. Which the landlord, and good for you, landlord, you got on that one. You changed it back and you charged them the fee. $100. Yours might be more expensive. We are currently up to 120. And then you've got this $100 fee. When can you charge this to your tenant? Have you notified them of the bill? If you do it same day, absolutely. This landlord did it same day. Did it and say, Bill, you owe me $100. They are not allowed to change the locks. And I don't know how many landlords just grin and bear it, but that is not okay. But the truth is, they share access to this unit with you. Yours is limited, for sure. But the idea that they get to exclude you by changing the locks is not what Texas law says, and it shouldn't be what your lease says. They change the locks, you change it back, you give them a warning along with that bill. Notice of default. Don't do that again. In fact, you cover that before you ever hand over the keys. By the way, I have a set of these on purpose. If at any point I am, for whatever reason, disallowed access, that's a problem, and I may terminate your lease based on, I'm sure this won't be a problem, keys, right? But you got to be on it, all right? So you fix it, and you hand them the bill that same day, and a notice of default. That's a problem. Don't do this again. Okay, so the next payment is on March 4th, $500. But because it's the 4th, they get a late fee of $30. So what is our new balance? They added $1,000 on March 1st. On March 4th, they made a payment. $750, yes. So on March 4th, we're up to $750 of unpaid rent. Remember, because that March rent kicked in, that payment of $500 was made, but it didn't clear rent. It cleared the old debt. So thank you for paying for the lock. Thank you for covering all the old late fees, but now you owe $750 in unpaid rent. Would it be appropriate at this point to hand a notice to vacate? Absolutely it would. Day 5, day 6, day 7, late fee, late fee, late fee. On day 18, we get another payment. So if we add the 3 other late fees, again, we cap out at $120. So $750 plus 30 on the 5th, plus 30 on the 6th, plus 30 on the 7th. I get $840 due as of March 7th. On March 18th, when that payment of $500 comes in, what is our current balance? $340 is correct. Then on April Fool's Day, guess what happens? They pay $1,000. Now, here's what too many landlords do. Too many landlords see 4 months, $4,000. We're good. I got all my rent. Not enough see a $340 balance there that you may as well take, put some lighter fluid on and set it on fire, because that's exactly what you're doing, and that's why businesses fail, because you take a $340 pile of cash and set it on fire.